السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أهلا أهلا.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Kabir, how are things out there, California?
الحمد لله الحمد لله.
Alhamdulillah. I'm missing the
Assalamualaikum.
Bay Area. Shaqif, कैसे? Ayur, எப்படி இருக்கீங்க?
நல்லா இருக்கேன் சார். நீங்க எப்படி இருக்கிறீங்க?
நல்லா இருக்காங்க. எல்லாமே நல்லா இருக்காங்க. I
Alhamdulillah.
heard you met
Brother Dries,
Idris,
yeah, I did.
mashallah.
Yeah, we met like 2 days back.
Wow, that was a true. If you don't mind, I'll send the picture in the chat.
Yeah, sure do. You know, it was my second time meeting him.
Yeah, he told me, and he told me also you're distantly related to his wife. So,
Yeah.
mashallah, mashallah. So for
It
those
was
who
really nice
don't know,
experience.
Shaqif is here from Sri Lanka, mashallah, listening in late at night. Must be, what is it, like 12 there?
Yeah, it was.
Mashallah, wow. That's the juhd. That is the hard work you need to put in for ilm, mashallah. But he met another student here, Dries, mashallah, who is married to a Sri Lankan. And what are the chances of that? You know, I know that I knew that you're both in Sri Lanka, but I was like, you know, you're probably in different areas of Sri Lanka. You know, maybe you're in
Like
Colombo and
1
he's in
kilometer
a
from
village.
my home. I am from
Yeah,
a
but they're
village. Actually, it's
mashallah,
just
mashallah.
1 kilometer away.
Wow, subhanallah. Probably the only two Malikis in Sri Lanka, 1 kilometer away from each other, huh?
Yeah, that's true. That's so true.
Mashallah. All right, but soon there'll be many more Malikis. Shaqif is going to become Ustad
Inshallah.
Shaqif.
Inshallah, inshallah.
Inshallah. All right, inshallah, go ahead and get started. بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا مولانا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا رسول رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك عليه وعلى آله صلاة تخرجنا بها من ظلمات الوهم وتكرمنا بها بنور الفهم وتوضح بها عما أشكل حتى يفهم أنك تعلم ولا نعلم وأنت علام الغيوب ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي Shaqif, if you don't mind turning off your mic, and unless you have a question, then you can, yeah, okay. So we're in the chapter of zakat, Babu zakat, and we studied about the zakat on crops, we studied about the zakat on money, on currency, and the zakat on livestock, okay? And within the zakat on money, we talked about the zakat on just pure currency, if you're having currency, but also we talked about if you are a merchant, if you're a businessman. And we said there are two kinds of business. There are either you are buying and selling continuously, you know, you have a marketplace, you have a shop that's always open for sale of goods. And the other kind of business is an investment business. And this is very common among people. Even if you're not what you think is a businessman, you might have investments, right? A house, stocks, cryptocurrencies, whatever, gold. So it's important to know those rules, but we won't go over this. If you want to go over it, review it from the last class, inshallah. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. Sister Jessica, I did see your questions, mashallah. Since they're not related to zakat, I'll answer them separately in the chat or at the end of the class, inshallah. Any zakat related questions before we continue? And may Allah give you a speedy recovery from your headache. I know that's not fun. And make it a means of forgiveness and elevation in rank. And keep us in your du'as as the du'a of the sick is answered. So if there's no questions, we will continue. And as our tradition that we started last class, I should say, we will go ahead and read the lines so that we may learn to memorize them. Ready? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن. This is from line number 201. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن. وحول الأرباح ونسل كالأصول والطارئ عما يزكى أن يحول ولا يزكى وقص من النعم كذاك ما دون النصاب واليعم. وعسل فاكهة مع الخضار إذ هي في المقتات مما يدخر ويحصل النصاب من صنفين كذهب وفضة من عين. Are y'all keeping up or am I just reading to myself? You don't have to turn on your mic, but you're keeping up? You know where we are? Line 205. All right, I got one thumbs up. Okay. And one yes, Sheikh. Alhamdulillah. والبطن للمعز وبغط للعراب بقر إلى الجواميس اصطحاب والقمح للشعير للسلت يصار كذا القطان والزبيب والثمار مصرفها الفقير والمسكين غاز وعتق عامل مدين مؤلف القلب ومحتاج غريب أحرار إسلام ودم يقبل مريب. And we may or may not do zakat al-fitr today, depending on the time, inshallah. All right, so he says, وَحَوْلُ الْأَرْبَاحِ وَنَسْلٍ كَالْأُصُولِ وَالطَّارِرَ عَمَّا يُزَكَّى أَنْ يَحُولِ. After talking about specifically the three categories of zakat, now he's going to talk about general rules that apply to how you pay the zakat across all the three categories. So the first thing to talk about is ribh. There are basically three ways you get new money. Okay, there are three categorizations of ways you get new money according to the categorization of zakat. Number one is ribh, which are profits. Buying and selling, you make a profit. Number two is ghalla. Ghalla. Ghalla are, you could say, revenues from renting or leasing or servicing something. For example, you own an Airbnb, you own an apartment, you Airbnb it out, or you own an apartment and even just rent it out. You rent it out, okay? You own a house, you rent it out. That is ghalla. And finally, there is fa'ida. And I saw your question on salaries, Jessica, and we will talk about that today. That is under fa'ida, okay? We talked a bit about it before, but we'll talk about it even more today. So Kabir, yes, the first is ribh, profit. That's like, you run a business, you make a profit. You buy, buy a house, you sell the house, you make a profit. Okay, that is ribh. You buy a house, you sell a house. Second one is ghalla, rental revenues or leasing revenues from renting something out. You rent out a house. That's a ghalla. And the last one is fa'ida. Fa'ida. From that, and that's what salaries fall under, fa'ida. Okay? It's basically you got a gift, you got money, not from buying and selling something or renting something out. That's a fa'ida. So a gift, a salary, inheritance, that's all fa'ida. So what are the rules of this? It says, حول الأرباح, a profit, and likewise nasl, offspring. We're not going to delve too much into the zakat on livestock, because I checked last time, no one has, as far as I checked, no one has any goats and sheep and buffaloes, right? And cows and camels. Anyone have some? I know Abu Bakr used to have some. Okay, so we're not going to delve too much into that. But the offspring of livestock are treated like profit. Okay? The offspring of livestock are treated like profit. And what that means is if you make a profit on something, that you pay the zakat on the profit according to the hawl, of the original money. All right, Abu Bakr, mashallah, has 4 goats. Okay. All right, keep us posted on the growth of your goats, inshallah. There's no zakat on chickens. Somebody had this question last time on deer. I don't think there's zakat on deer either. We'll get to that. So let's say, give an example. Let's give an example, right? I have this tasbih. Okay. This tasbih is from a shop called Baraka Beads. Anyone heard of Baraka Beads? Okay. Baraka Beads. Now, Baraka Beads is a shop. Yes, Jessica heard of them. Alhamdulillah. It's a shop. So they make a profit, right? Hopefully they make a profit, inshallah. They're based out here. I think the owner is based out here in Egypt. And he's a student. So hopefully he's making a profit. Now, let's say he starts his shop with $10,000. $10,000 he starts his shop. And he buys, the materials for this. And he starts this in Muharram. In Muharram, he says, I'm going to open the shop, Baraka Beads. He has the name of the idea. He starts a website. And he says, you know what? I need to go buy the wood. And I need to buy some, I guess this is like glass, right? Some of the beads are like glass. And I need to go buy the string, and I need to go pay for the website, and I need to maybe, he pays for all this material. That material costed him, actually, let's make the number more believable. $1,000. Okay? $1,000, he buys all the material for the initial starting of the store. $1,000, is that the nisab or not? Anyone? $1,000, is that the nisab or not? Jessica says yes. Any other answers? She takes it back with the weight, maybe because I said, it seems I doubted the answer. And maybe I didn't doubt it. Maybe I'm just seeing if other people get it as well. Abu Bakr says right now, no. Any other answers? Because the year hasn't passed or anything was different because it's not cast. Here is the reality. Any other answers? I mean, there's only yes or no. So gotta pick a team Abu Bakr or team Jessica. Everyone else is quiet. Tawaqquf, huh? See. Okay. Team Abu Bakr. Okay. That is correct. Why? Because the nisab, we said, is something like $4,500. Remember that, Jessica? We said it's something like $4,500. $4,600. You basically get the value of 10 gold dinars and of 100 silver dirhams, and you put them together. And how much is that? It's about $4,600. So $1,000 is below that. Okay, so in Muharram, he has $1,000. He starts Baraka Beads. And then he's doing well. The money keeps growing and he keeps making a profit. By the time of Dhul Hijjah, he has made $4,000 in profit. $4,000 in profit. Okay. So how much is the total now? Hope you're training your mathematical minds. How much is the total? He made $4,000 in profit. Started with 1,000, 5,000. Excellent. 5,000 is above or below the nisab? above the nisab. So he pays zakat. When does he pay zakat? He pays zakat in Muharram. You might say, why in Muharram? He just hit the nisab in Dhul Hijjah. Well, because the profit follows the hawl of the original money with which he made a profit. Okay? So if he makes a profit before the hawl passes, then he pays the zakat according to the original hawl. Let's say he only makes the $5,000 profit after the hawl had passed, $4,000 profit after the hawl had passed. Well, then he waits another hawl. Okay? Any questions? So that is profit, and I think no one's here is a businessman, so. But it's important if you're selling certain things. Maybe Abu Bakr, you're selling your goats. Maybe he waits another hawl from Muharram. Or sorry, he waits another hawl from. He waits another hawl from. That's a good question. Waits another hawl from Muharram. Let me see one. That is an important question. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna go get the Sharh Khalil. I'm pretty sure he waits another hawl from Muharram, not from the Nisab. Reaching the Nisab. Okay. Let's see here. We'll open Dardir. It says Dardir, the Sharh on Premier Sharh on Khalil. Khalil is the one I sent the video in the chat that we visited today. And subhanAllah, I just opened right to the page. وضم الربح لأصله ولو أقل من ولا يستقبل به من حين ظهوره فمن عنده دينار أول المحرم فتاجر فيه فصار بربح 20 فعوله محرم إن تم نصاب الربح بعد الحول زكى حينئذ. I see. So actually, he does not wait another hawl. In the example I gave, if he reached $5,000 after Muharram, in, let's say, Muharram Safar, he reached it in Safar, then he would pay the zakat in Safar immediately. In Safar immediately, because the original money already waited the entire hawl. Okay? Does that make sense? So you start with 1,000 in Muharram. If you made $4,000 of profit from your selling your barakah beads, mashallah, before you hit Muharram, then you pay in Muharram. After you hit Muharram, then you pay immediately. As soon as you hit the nisab. Then he says, and similar, you apply the same rules to offspring. والطاري لا عما يزكى أن يحول. والطاري لا عما يزكى أن يحول. Again, this applies to livestock. And generally what it means that the year has to allow anything suddenly acquired. If when added to other wealth in one's possession below the nisab, the total amount, although if the zakat is already due on it. Okay, so basically what it means is this, right? That we're talking about livestock. Abu Bakr has 4 goats, right? Abu Bakr has 4 goats. That's correct. The investment also included in the nisab. Well, what do you mean by that, Shaqif?
When you said at the end of Dhul Hijjah, he had 5 kids, right? So he had already invested 1,000 as his startup. So he does not have that 1,000 with him.
Yes, but he invested $1,000. He bought all the materials for the beads. He bought the wood and the string and the glass, all of that, right? And he made a bunch of beads. Then he sold all the beads for $5,000. Okay? So how much is his profit? $4,000.
That's
Yeah.
$4,000.
Yeah. All right. So Kabir, after you pay zakat on the original amount that reaches nisab, does the profit counter reset to 0? Or would you continue to pay zakat on that money if you continue to keep a profit over nisab? You continue to pay zakat on that money. Any money that stays a whole year, you pay zakat on that money. Okay? Any money that stays a whole year, you pay the zakat on the money. Yeah. You have to wait another year, and you have to maintain the nisab for the entire year.
So sorry. Even if it says 2 years, 3 years, you just keep paying every year. I'm asking. Okay.
Every year. It's not like income tax, right? It's more like a tax. I mean,
Like
no,
a proper wealth
taxes
tax.
after wealth tax, yeah, and property tax, right? Property tax you pay every year, right?
Yep.
Okay. So Abu Bakr has 4 goats. Abu Bakr has 4 goats. Below the nisab or above the nisab? Below the nisab. He got the 4 goats in Muharram. In Dhul Hijjah, Abu Bakr says, you know what? I'm going to get back into goats. Right? Right, Abu Bakr, you're going to get back into goats in Dhul Hijjah. Right now is Muharram, Dhul Hijjah. Abu Bakr says, I'm going to get back into goats. So he goes and he buys 36 goats. Inshallah. So above or below the nisab? Or at the nisab? It's at the nisab. 40 goats is the nisab. Remember from line number 198. Shatun arba'ina ma ukhra tudab. 40 goats is the nisab. So in Dhul Hijjah he got it. In Dhul Hijjah. Now, does he have to pay the zakat in Muharram? No. He waits an entire year. Okay? Because this is a fa'idah. The first example we were talking about ribh. Now we're talking about fa'idah. Remember we said 3 categories. Ribh, ghalla, fa'idah. Profit, rental revenues, and salaries. Or any kind of gift or buying, or any receipt of goods and money that's not rental revenue and profit. So he went and bought 30 goats, or he's gifted 36 goats. Right? Gifted 36 goats. MashaAllah. What a gift. And he hits the nisab. Does he have to pay the zakat in Muharram because he had the 4 goats in Muharram? Or he got the first 4 goats in Muharram? No. He waits an entire year from getting the 36 goats. Another example. Now Abu Bakr has 40 goats. In the next Dhul Hijjah, he gets another 100 goats. Man, who is this brother gifting Abu Bakr with goats? I hope he gives us as well. Yeah. But he gives him another 100 goats. Okay? Now he has how many goats? Anybody quick with the goat math? Okay, 140 goats. How many does he owe now? 2. Exactly. As soon as Dhul Hijjah comes around, he has to pay the 2. Okay? So we differentiate between if the original amount was below the nisab or if the original amount was above the nisab. If the original amount was below the nisab, then you wait an entire year from getting the gift or the fa'idah. If the original amount was above the nisab and you were already going to pay anyway, then you include that fa'idah in your payment. All right? This one is not so important. If you didn't get it, it's not so important. Just listen to the recording again. But what is important is now the fa'idah on money. The fa'idah on money. Because everyone here gets a salary, right? Or I know Muhammad Yasin and Abu Bakr are running their own business, but you are getting a payment directly from your clients, right? And you're getting a money payment. So that's also a fa'idah. Now, how do you pay the money on that? Well, it's quite simple. It is quite simple to pay the money on salary. When you get the salary, you record that you got the salary. And nowadays, you don't even have to record it because it's in your bank statement. And you wait 1 lunar year from getting the salary. So I will show you right now an old zakat sheet I have. Okay. I'll just change some of the payments. Okay. Let me look very quickly here. So this is the sheet I have. And basically what you do, everyone can see the Google sheet, right? Basically what you do is you take your bank statement, and usually it comes in a Gregorian date, and then you need to convert it to a Hijri date. And in Excel, it's very easy. In Excel, it's very easy. You can actually just go format the cell, right? Conditional formatting. But in Excel, it'll give you the option to change the format if you're in a different region. So you change your region to a Muslim country, an Arabic country especially, like Algeria or like Egypt. So you change your region, and then you can change the date to Hijri date. So once you get the Hijri date for all the for that month in the Hijri calendar. Okay, notice the Gregorian calendar is December and also January. But in the Hijri calendar, this is all, I believe this is Jamad al-Thani. Yeah, Jamad al-Awwal. Okay, Jamad al-Thani. Okay, so this is the dates. Okay, then what you do is you put the amounts, and notice that some of these are spending and some of these are receiving. So this is like the salary. Okay, this is another salary. Okay, and you sum these all up. Okay, so if I sum these all up, it actually sums it. Okay, so actually I lost money in this month, right? Well, let's say I made money. Okay, I'm just going to change this to, just for the sake of the example, something like this. Okay, made $10,000. MashaAllah. May Allah bless us all with halal rizq. Okay, so now in this month, essentially the fa'idah is $4,834. Okay, what I'm going to do is the next Jamad al-Thani, then I'm going to pay $4,834. Zakat on that, I'm going to pay 0.025 times this. Okay, there we go. That's to be the zakat that we do. You must do that for every month, at least. Okay, this is already a rukhsa. Now, maybe you spend some money after this. So maybe after Jamad al-Thani and something like Ramadan, you have a negative month where you lose money. So you spend something like $6,000. Maybe you took a Umrah trip, okay, and in Ramadan, and you lost $6,000. But you gained many hasanat for taking the Umrah trip. then you just remove some amount from here. So this, you would actually, in Ramadan, remember it's after Jum'at al-Thani, you would say, okay, actually, this now goes to, I can just add some amount to here. So actually this is 0. I spent all the money that I got in Jum'at al-Thani, and this was something like negative 200, 2,834. And maybe I spent some money in Sha'ban, and I also subtract from the Sha'ban. Why do I subtract? Because you need to maintain that money for an entire year in order for you to pay zakat on that, in order for zakat to be due on that. Okay, you have to maintain the payment for the entire year. Otherwise, there's no zakat due on it. So again, I'm writing up a guide right now on this, and I'll share the guide after. So if that's still confusing, I'll share it after I finish writing the guide. But the basic principle is, number one, you take your bank statements, or if you're not using a bank, I know some friends who don't use a bank. You keep a spreadsheet, or you keep a notebook of when you receive the payments, right? Especially Abu Bakr and Muhammad Yasin. As businessmen, how important it is to keep track of your payments and your costs. So every Hijri month, you combine the payments and the costs, and that's okay. And then if it's a positive amount, you ensure that you maintain that nisab for the whole until the next Hijri year. If it's a negative amount, you subtract perhaps from a previous positive amount. Okay? And that's how you do the zakat on salaries. Any quick questions? Okay. And don't worry, I will publish. Inshallah, I'm working on a guide. I'll share it with you all very soon. And we will publish it, inshallah. Okay. If you go below, does the clock reset? Yes, it is. So the first step might be just to make sure that you maintain the nisab for the entire year. If you don't maintain $4,600 for the entire year, then there's no zakat. All right, so then he says, وَلَا يُزَكَّى وَقَصٌ مِنَ النَّعَمِ. The waqas is basically a portion that you don't pay zakat on. Let's say that you had 50 goats. How much zakat is there? 50 goats. How much zakat is there? 50 goats? Yeah, one. You're right. MashaAllah. But 10 is left over. Exactly. It's the remainder. That remainder is called the waqas. The remainder, because technically you're not paying any zakat on these 10 goats, because one goat is for 40. So 10 is left over. Excellent way of phrasing it, Sister Jessica. And those 10 you don't essentially pay zakat on. Let's say you had 100 goats. How much zakat? 100 goats. Still one goat, right? So essentially you don't pay zakat on 60 goats. That's the waqas. 120 goats. Now you pay 2. And there's no waqas. Okay? That's the concept of waqas. كذاك ما دون النصاب ولا. And likewise, you don't pay if you're below the nisab. We talked about that. وعسل فاكهة مع الخضار إذ هي في المقتات مما يدخر. There's no zakat on things like honey and other fruits and vegetables, unlike some of the other madhabs, because the illah, the reason for zakat, according to the Maliki madhab, is not just any food. It's not just any food. Zakat is owed on wealth that grows over time. Wealth that is stored and is food. Stored and is food. Because if you can't store the food, then it can't grow over time, right? If you have apples, You can't keep your apples for 10 years. They'll go bad in a few weeks, so it doesn't grow. But if you have wheat, you can keep your wheat for 10 years, for 14 years. And that's what happened in Surah Yusuf. And that was the advice of Yusuf alayhi salam. يوسف أيها الصديق أفتنا في 7 بقرات سمان يأكلهن 7 عجاف و7 سنبلات خضر وأخرى يابسات لعلي أرجع إلى الناس لعلهم يعلمون قال تزرعون 7 سنين دأبا فما حصدتم فذروه في سنبله إلا قليلا مما تأكلون ثم يأتي من بعد ذلك عام فيه يغاث الناس وفيه يعصرون ثم يأتي 7 شداد يأكلن ما قدمتم لهن إلا قليلا مما تحصنون. So they actually stored for 7 years and then kept it for 7 years. And yes, this is your question about. So in total, some of that wheat was kept for maybe even 14 years. All right. Honey is storable. Honey is storable to a degree, by the way. After a while, you can't keep it for 14 years. At least as far as I've seen. I've seen our own honey. It will separate and it won't become very edible, right? But in any case, there's another requirement as well, which is muqtat muddakhar. Muqtat muddakhar. And that's actually why he gave the example of honey. Maybe exactly why he gave the example of honey. Because honey, you could say maybe it's muddakhar, you can store it, but it's not muqtat. You cannot live off of honey. You cannot just eat honey for days, right? You'll die of maybe diabetes. On the other hand, you can eat wheat for days. You can eat hummus for days. You can eat beans for days. And people do in different cultures, right? So these are staple foods that are nourishing. Okay, they're nourishing and they are storable. Good question. So if it is storable, does it mean that you pay zakat on it every year? No, we talked about zakat on crops, remember, Haytham? You pay when you harvest. And then after that, if you're a merchant, you pay every year. If you're a businessman, you pay. But those are according to the rules of business. But you pay when you harvest. Okay. All right. ويحصل النصاب من صنفين كذهب وفضة من عين وبأن للمعز وبخت للعراب بقر للجواميس الصحاب والقمح للشعير للسلت يصار كذا القطان والزبيب والثمار. These lines 204 to 206 we talked about before, but essentially, it means a genus of wealth. You combine any types within the genus, okay? And genuses and types we'll learn about, and logic, if you ever do logic one day. A very important subject in the Islamic tradition. Even though people say that logic, I once saw some da'i or some speaker who said, yeah, we can't take from Razi because he used logic, and that's haram. Brother, if using logic is haram, then the only halal way to live life is stupidly. Because if you don't use logic, you're stupid. Logic is, everyone uses logic, right? It's just that some use it poorly and some use it stupidly, okay? In any case, we'll come to that when we come to that. You combine all the types within a genus. All right? So, for example, what are the different genuses? Gold and silver are genuses. Or today, any 2 currencies are genuses. So, if Shaqif, what is the currency in Sri Lanka? Is it also rupee?
Yeah, it is rupees.
Okay. If Shaqif said, and how much is 1 rupee to $1?
Okay, $1 is 300 rupees. Sri Lankan.
300. Okay. So Shaqif said, you know what? I don't have $4,600 because I'm not in America. Maybe some family gives him and he manages to collect $1,000. Okay, US dollars. The rest of his money is in rupees, Sri Lankan rupees, and he has how much? 36 times 3, 8, 1, 10, 108. 108,000 rupees. Right? Is that right? 108,000. 36 times 3 is 108. And no, sorry. He has how much is equivalent to 3,600? You add 4 zeros. You add 300. These are big numbers. 3 zeros and 2 zeros. You add 5 zeros. Okay? 108, 1. Okay? Yes. So 10.8 million rupees, right? Is that right? 3,600 times. It's a huge amount. SubhanAllah. 1.8, 1.08, 1.08, 1 billion rupees. Okay? So he has another million rupees. So he says, I have $100,000 and $1 million rupees. I don't have $4,600. No, you combine both of them and he has to pay zakat. Okay? And likewise with any two currencies. وَالضَّأْنُ لِلْمَعْزِ, you combine the goats, the sheep, the بُخْتٌ لِلْعِرَابِ, the 2 hump camels, the 1 hump camel. بَخَرٌ إِلَى الْجَوَامِسِ اسْتِحَابِ, the cows with the water buffalo, especially in India, right? A lot of water buffalo. وَالْقَمْحُ لِلشَّعِيرِ, the sulti yusar, all the kinds of wheat you add together. فَذَا الْقَطَانِ وَالزَّبِيبُ وَالثِّمَارِ, all the kinds of beans you add together, the 7 kinds that we mentioned before. وَالزَّبِيبُ, all the kinds of raisins you add together. And وَالثِّمَارِ, and all the kinds of dates you add together. You don't say, oh, I have Majul dates, and I have Yemeni dates, and I have Madani dates, Sukkari, and I don't have, so they're all different kinds of dates. No. They're all, you added together. All right? We'll take a 5-minute break here. I'm going to pray, and then I'll come back, and we can finish, inshallah, with the types of zakat. Types of people that you owe zakat to. If you have any questions, type them in the chat, and we'll also answer them when I'm back. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Hope you all took a break and weren't just sitting there. Good to hear from you, Bakr. All right, we'll go ahead and finish, inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Now we're talking about the types of the categories of people that zakat is paid to. And this is an important subject because every year or every other year there's always a fight about, oh, this organization is saying their zakat eligible and they're giving the zakat to, research. They're giving the zakat to building buildings. They're giving the zakat to building a mosque. So what actually counts as zakat and what doesn't? Who can you give the zakat to? مصرفها الفقير والمسكين. Al-faqir is someone who does not have enough food for an entire year. Okay? They don't have enough to live for an entire year, including food, clothing, and shelter. And you might say, why would they have it for an entire year? Because as we said, in the past, not even that long ago, 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and sometimes and still in some places, people used to keep food for the entire year in the storehouse. Remember we said that? It was very common. Maybe some folks like Muhammad Yasin, you would know?
Yes, Sheikh. I remember our grandparents used to store in a large container, a wooden container.
Exactly. Yes, Jessica knows as well. So it was common throughout the world until the age of the refrigerator, right? That's why we said they didn't have enough food for an entire year. So somebody today can't say, oh, I'm making $100,000 a year, but I only have enough food for 1 week in my fridge, maybe even 1 day. So am I counting as a faqir? No, you're not counting as a faqir. Because you make enough money to live for the entire year. And you're continuously making enough money to live for the entire year. This is talking about people who can't make enough money, who don't have someone paying for them, who don't have enough supplies for the entire year. That is the faqir. The miskeen is even more ashad. They don't even have enough for 1 day. They don't even have enough for 1 day. And these are the people, like the homeless people, unfortunately, that we see across the world. They don't have enough for 1 day even. They're on the road. They don't even know if they're going to get dinner today, So that's a miskeen. Ghazin, somebody who's fighting as a ghazi, that is as a fighting in service of Islam, like people are doing in Gaza today, fighting for their land. They're being oppressed, genocided, killed, murdered for the world to see. May Allah help them and lift their state and allow us to be among their helpers. And don't hold us accountable for what we could not do. But in reality, the reward is great. And if it were possible to give zakat, it's not really possible, but if it were possible, giving it to them would be zakat. Even if they were rich, quote unquote, right? But giving it to them is zakat. وَعِتْقٌ, freeing slaves. So if a slave is Muslim, you can use your zakat to pay for him being free. And this is why people don't understand the system of slavery in Islam. The system of slavery in Islam was not a system of racism. It was not a system of injustice. It was not a system just to have slaves. In fact, it was a system to free slaves. And the reason they were slaves is because they were prisoners of war, because war happened constantly. And unlike today, in the past, war had ethics and rules. And he didn't just kill everyone and genocide everyone at will whenever he wanted to. Rather, if they surrendered, and they surrendered with certain conditions, it's not, we don't need to discuss them here, but with certain conditions, they were fighting you, but they eventually surrendered, they can be taken as slaves, okay? But then they become Muslim. That is the goal at the end of the day. That's the difference between when Muslims fight and non-Muslims fight, and especially atheists fight. Atheists fight to kill, but Muslims never fight to kill. They weren't fighting for power. They weren't fighting for wealth. They were fighting to give the religion to others. And that's why it's reported of one of the Sahaba in Fath Makkah. It's reported that he said, "Now I understood why you were fighting us," after the Fath Makkah. And he became Muslim. And he said, "Now I understood why you were fighting us. It was for our sake." And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said before Badr, he got up and he looked at the Quraysh. They were his people. He said, "Allahumma ighfir li qawmi fa innahum la ya'lamun." He said, "Oh Allah, forgive my people because they don't know better." They don't know better. They were ready to kill him, and he was making dua for them. That was the mercy of the Prophet ﷺ, and that is the mercy that our religion carries forth. And that's why you saw actually some of the greatest scholars in the first generations, especially, they were freed slaves because they were slaves, and maybe zakat was given, and they were freed, and they became the greatest scholars in Islam because they spent the greatest amount of time with many Sahaba, right? One of Malik's foremost teachers, Nafi', was a freed slave, Nafi' ibn Umar. Okay, and he's part of the golden chain of hadith. Okay, show me a freed slave like that in any society. You'll never find him. Amilun Madinu. An amil, the person who's actually collecting zakat, can also take from the zakat. Okay? Nafi' was his name. Nafi' Mawla ibn Umar. Okay? The golden chain is Ibn Umar. It's Abdullah ibn Umar, the son of Umar radiallahu anh, who was himself was a Sahabi, to Nafi' to Malik. Golden chain across Islam is Malik to Nafi' to Ibn Umar. That's why we say the Maliki school has such a strong connection to the multiple Sahaba, not just one Sahaba. And this was an example of it. Malik to Nafi' to Ibn Umar. Okay? Amilun, the person who's working can take from the zakat in a rate that's commensurate to the work. And a rate that's commensurate to their work. So yes, it's allowed for zakat organization. There's no problem for zakat organization to take some money for its own operations, if that money is commensurate to the work they're doing. Okay? So they can't take $1 million just to distribute $100,000. But $100,000, maybe they have to go and spend a week going to different families, giving them the money, making sure that they're Muslim, making sure that they're actually in need of the money. And so they take from the $100,000, they take, $5,000. No problem in that. Okay? Madinu. And even if they're rich, by the way, even if they're rich, maybe even if they're well off, they can still take the amount that's commensurate to the work. Madinu. Someone who's in debt. Someone who's in debt and doesn't have any other assets to their name. So you can't say, oh, this person is in debt, but he has a mansion house. Yeah. He took a loan for his mansion house and now he's in debt. No, this person does not get zakat. And as ulama mentioned, they even have to sell their books. If you come to me and I needed a zakat, I have a book, and I have a book that costs $1,000. SubhanAllah, there's some books that cost $1,000. You should not say, oh, Ustad Tariq, I mean, I have pity on him. He doesn't have any money and he's spending his time with ilm. No. You should say, Ustad, I need you to sell that $1,000 book. And then if you don't have money, I can give you zakat. Okay? Go ahead, Shaqib.
So I have this question regarding zakat. Once one of my villager passed away, his siblings, what they did was they did not uh, distribute the zakat or sadaqah amongst the villagers, but what they did was they paid his debt off. Is it considered lawful, or is that how is it considered?
They paid his debt from his inheritance, you're saying?
No, from the other siblings, zakat money or sadaqah. Forget sadaqah. If it is zakat, is it okay for them to pay off their passed away the late siblings' debts?
Yes, it is okay to pay. Yeah. It mentions here in Khalil, وَمَدِينٌ وَإِن مَاتَ. Let me see. Yeah, وَمَدِينٌ وَلَوْ مَاتَ يُحْبَسُ فِيهِ. It is okay to pay. There's some detail, but it is okay to pay. So someone's debt who passed away. Okay. مؤلف القلب ومحتاج غريب. So مؤلف القلب is someone who's a non-Muslim, but giving them some money would make them Muslim. Or you have a very high chance of leading them to Islam. Okay? A very good chance of leading them to Islam. And maybe this is hard to picture, but imagine, you go to a downtrodden neighborhood, you go to, some ghettos, you go to the Appalachian Hills. In America, we have certain areas which are very poor. And it would be an amazing project if a Muslim could go there. And you do some da'wah at first, and then you can go and give these people, maybe you can change their lives with a couple $1,000s, okay? You say, here's $2,000. And they would be so happy they might become Muslim, right? This is a mu'allaf al-qalb. So someone you hope to become Muslim, you think there's a good chance to become Muslim if you give them money. And you can give the zakat to them. Muhtajun gharib, someone who's a traveler and they're in need. Ahraru islamin walam yuqbal murib. And these are the conditions on which you have to give zakat. These are the conditions on which you have to give zakat. On all these categories, they must be free people, except of course the slave, whom you buy their freedom. Islamin, they all have to be Muslim, except of course the mu'allaf al-qalb, the one whose heart may be brought closer to Islam. They're non-Muslim, obviously. وَلَمْ يُقْبَلْ مُرِيب. And you have no doubt about them. Meaning, somebody comes to you and says they're poor, you can accept their statement that they're poor. Okay? You don't have to do a deep investigation. But if somebody comes to you and says they're poor, and it's very clear they're not poor, or maybe it's not even very clear, but there's a little bit of doubt. Why is there a doubt? Because, well, there's a lot of fraudulent people in this area, and they all come around and say they're poor, but they're actually part of our mafia. Or and that happens in many places, right? I know it sounds crazy. They're part of a mafia. That happens. In fact, in Morocco, when I went, I learned that they even use the kids. And actually here, even in Egypt, they use the kids as part of the mafia. So they'll send little kids, they won't have any shoes on, their shirt will be ripped, their face will be dirty, and they'll ask you for any money, like 5 coins, 10 coins, anything. But then they won't get to keep the money for themselves. They'll go and take it to the mafia lord. All right? So in this case, if you know this area is run by some mafia, you don't give them the zakat because there's a murib, there's a raib. But if there's no thought around that. If there's no, it's just the area. You look at someone looks poor, you give them the money. There's no need to investigate so thoroughly, unless you're doing this on a mass scale. Okay, and you're handling other people's money, and there's a need to investigate a bit. But it's narrated even of Ibrahim alayhi salam that he was walking through. Ibrahim alayhi salam was walking through a village, and a person came and asked him for money. And he said, "Become Muslim and I'll give you money." And the person said, "I'm not going to become Muslim." And so he didn't give him money. And as he was walking away, Allah revealed to him, or Allah talked to him. And he said, "Ya Ibrahim, why didn't you give him money?" And Ibrahim alayhi salam said, "Ya Rabb, he does not want to become Muslim. I didn't give him money." And Allah said, Ibrahim, to Sayyidina Ibrahim, he said, "I am the Lord of this universe. I am the master of the universe. And he is disbelieving in me. And I have given him rizq every single day, keeping him alive, financially, physically, economically, emotionally, everything. I've given him rizq in every instance till this day. And he asked you once for some rizq and you couldn't give him." So Sayyidina Ibrahim, إِنَّهُ لَحَلِيمٌ أَوَّاهٌ مُنِيبٌ, as it says in the Quran, he was extremely merciful. أَوَّاهٌ حَلِيمٌ أَوَّاهٌ مُنِيبٌ. And so extremely forbearing. And so he went back to the village and he was looking, where's the man? And he found the man and he said, "Here, take this money that you asked for." The man said, why did you give me this money? And he told him the story. And so the man became Muslim. So all that to say that it's not necessary to do an extreme, investigation and see like, oh, show me your bank statement. Where's your finances? Spy on this person. Are they actually poor or not? Take your precautions. But if it seems they are poor, give them the money. And the rest is with Allah. Right. Okay. So we'll stop there for today. Then we continue next time, inshallah, with zakat al-fitr. So he says, Shaqif says, "I've seen this done, but they don't teach the new Muslims. The reverts say they became Muslims because they're getting paid." Meaning, the list does not include reverts.
So this happened in an area. They just moved a lot of people from a different place. They happened to be new Muslims, but they did every possible haram things. They were like, they weren't even considering themselves to be Muslims. And when the villagers went to them and asked, "Why are you behaving like this? We can teach you and everything. Come live with us." They said, "No, we don't need you. We need the money. So we are living here." That's what they said.
So then they're not. They said they're not Muslim.
They didn't. I don't know about that, but they said they are being Muslims just because of the money they are getting paid. There was this group. We call them Tawhid Jamaat. It's relevant in India as well. They are the people
Yeah,
who
I know
had
Tawhid
given.
Jamaat.
Yeah, they were the people they had given the money to them, and they made them Muslims. But that's it. And then nothing was going on. They were getting paid regularly, I guess, once a month or something like that.
Mhm. It goes back to whether they say they're Muslim or not, right? Sure, they could be doing the haram. Sure, they could say, "Hey, we don't want to fix our haram," and that's not good, obviously. But they are still Muslim as long as they say we are Muslim, and as long as they don't deny any of the larura, ma'ruf min al-darura bid-din. If they say that, praying is not necessary, then they're not Muslim. But if they're not praying, but they say, "Yeah, we know praying is necessary, but we don't want to pray. If there was a qadi, actually, they would be put to death. But in the modern day and age, there's no qadi. I mean, there's no sultan, right? So you leave them and you say, just tell us if you're Muslim or not. You give them money if they're Muslim, if they're not Muslim. Sorry. This is, by the way, this is not to give them after, right? After they become Muslim, then it's based on whether they're poor or not. Before, this is for them to become Muslim, okay? Yeah. But there's a couple of interesting. Okay, so on the subject of trusting some of the word of God. So any harm for Islamic students to conduct some sort of checks similar to the ones conducted by the government? No, there's no harm, and it's good if the organization does it. Why? Why is it good? Because if they give the zakat to the wrong person, then they are liable. If they give the zakat to the wrong person, and then they find out that person is not actually poor, then the zakat must be redone. Okay. In our faida examples, if I'm understanding correctly, if someone were to go over the nisab and then continue to increase in money, you then pay zakat on 15K in the next Muharram, 5K Muharram, and make 10K in the hajj. You then pay zakat 15K in the next Muharram. Yeah, you would have to keep adding. So every Muharram, you look at, if you keep increasing, you never go below the nisab, you look at all the Muharrams from the time you hit the nisab. That money, if any of it is left over, specifically that money is left over, then you pay. But as you can see, I showed you an example, you continue to subtract. So obviously, even if your money is increasing, you're still spending some money, and you can continue to subtract from previous amounts. Okay, so you don't have to maintain all the previous amounts. And I will, inshallah, publish a guide that hopefully make this easier. We'll stop there for today, and then the rest of the questions I'll answer in the chat, inshallah. نسأل الله أن يعلمنا ما ينفعنا وينفعنا بما علمنا إنه على ما يشاء قدير وبالإجابة جدير ونعم المولى ونعم النصير صلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. فيكم بارك الله وإياكم.
وعليكم السلام شيخ.
استودعكم الله الذي لا تضيع ودائعه.